So I was making a couple rolling carts for under the bench the other day. I always store things under the ends of my workbench, and it's not stored very well, so I've decided to make some rolling carts. And that's what I've been working on for the past few days. And I just thought, since I'm edge banding everything in sight, I would make a short video to show you how you can edge band in the micro shop, and it doesn't have to cost you a whole pile of money. So you can see I've got my parts here. It's a 5-part cart. Do that to Harmony, man. It's a 5-part cart, a 5-part cart, it's a 5-part cart. That just sounds horrible. It's got 2 sides, a top and a bottom, and then it's got this little piece here, which is going to be kind of the thing that goes across the back and keeps stuff from falling out. And that's the part I'm going to edge band. So the first thing you have to do is cut your piece of plywood to the correct dimensions, and I do that with my Festool TS75, and that's not an ad for Festool. You can use whatever saw that you want. My suggestion though is that you make sure the blade makes a nice smooth cut. This one does. This saw is definitely not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's what I have, so that's what I use. And you can see that another issue that I have is this plywood is absolute crap. So even though Festool makes their guide rails and everything so that you can avoid this kind of stuff, it still happens. And well, it's shop furniture, so I'm not going to sweat it at this point. But that's unfortunately something you're going to have to live with. So these are the tools I use for edge banding. I have a roll of 3/4 inch birch veneer tape with glue on the back of it, a pair of scissors to cut the tape to length. I have a flea market iron here that cost me $5. Excellent iron, and that's what I use to heat the tape up and adhere it. Then I use an ash block, hardwood block, to make sure that it's firmly pressed in place, and it helps to cool it off. Once the veneer tape is cool and set, I use the Olfa knife to remove the ends and any excess that exists on the edges. I prefer to use this little Veritas apron plane to take off the edges down to where I can finish them off with a file. And then of course I have a file brush because that glue tends to gum the file up pretty well. And that's it. That's all that I use. Alright, so just a quick note about the temperature of the iron. I have mine set on linen, which is the highest setting it goes to. I just noticed the steam thing is set on, but there's no steam in it because the iron's bone dry. It's never had water in it. I bought this iron at a flea market for $5, and it was brand new in the box. It had never been used, so there's never ever been any water in it, and you shouldn't probably use steam with it anyway. The first step that I do is I cut the veneer tape to length, but I've noticed that this little zigzag, that's a join between 2 pieces of veneer tape, and that's the last thing I want showing, so off with its head. Now, the next thing I do is I stretch it out, and I like to leave a little bit. You know, this isn't a production shop, so I'm not trying to get every last penny out of every piece of veneer tape or anything else, even though I am kind of a cheap bugger and I like to do a lot of, use up all my scrap wood. I still leave a little bit left over that lets me have purchase on it in case I do it crooked and I have to kind of squidge it around. And I lay it on the part that I want to veneer, and then it's time for step 2. Iron's hot, ready to strike. Now you don't want it to sit in one place for any length of time. I like to set it on, and I like to keep moving it slowly, but I press firmly, and then I'm constantly checking with my fingers to make sure that I'm sort of centered on the piece of wood, and I just keep going and moving. It's like ironing a pair of pants. It's not really any different. You just want to keep a nice firm pressure, and you want to heat everything evenly. I don't know how long I really leave it on there, so I mean, if you can time it off the video if you want, but I'm just kind of making sure that there's heat along the whole way and that I get the ends. Now, one of the things I like to do too is I just tip it at the ends a little bit just to make sure the corners don't lift, and I run once more before I'm done I tilt the end, tilt it up so I can do the edge, and then I'm finished with the iron. Then I grab my block, my wooden block, and I press down firmly all the whole length. A little bit extra at the edges, because, or at the ends, because that's sometimes, if it's going to lift, I think that's where it would lift. I'll be honest with you, I've never actually had a piece of veneer tape lift. You know what? This will be the first time, because I just said that on camera, and that's Murphy's Law, isn't it? And then at the ends, I just tip it up a bit, just to make sure that it's down at the ends, and cant it a bit, and do the corners. And that's it. Good to go. Now, I can't do anything else with it until it's cooled off and it's set. So that usually takes a little bit of time. So in the process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it off to the side, and then I'm going to veneer one of the other pieces and come back to this when it's cool. So it's cool now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it face down on the bench, and I'm going to take the utility knife. And I like to stick out quite a bit of blade because I press the blade up against the wood and bend it so I can get good and close, but not too close. Now, Meg, I don't know how you're going to see this. Can you see that on camera?
Yep.
Okay. And I just slide the knife across a few times. Sorry, this is kind of an odd position for me. I don't usually do it like this. Pop that off. Now, it's not 100%. That one's pretty close to 100%. Usually there's a little tiny bit left over, which is fine, because I just take that off when I file anyway. Here we go. And now I'm done with the utility knife. The veneer tape sticks out a little bit, obviously, because it's slightly wider than 3/4 of an inch, and I want to get as much set down as possible. And my preferred weapon is to use this little plane. And but sometimes it's a little bit too much. What you can do is gently, or what sometimes I do is, and you have to watch the direction of the grain because it will dig in and get right into the face of your plywood, and you don't want that, and that's the wrong direction there. You can sometimes pare a little bit down if it's too much. If the veneer tape slipped on you and you've got a lot hanging out like right there, you can take some of that down, and it's less planing. Because the planing, well, I enjoy doing it for the sake of doing it, but it's, you know, can take a while if you have a lot of stuff there. When I plane, it's always lifted up a little bit, and I kind of go at an angle, so to reduce, even though I think this is a low angle plane. But I'm trying to make sure that I don't get into the face, and I want it down like this, where I can just feel it, just a hair of it sticking above. I can just feel it, just a hair above. Alright, and then I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. Alright, so it's done now. I can just feel like a hair sticking over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this file. This is it's a half-round smooth file. I've had it forever. It's getting a little bit on the worn side, but it's really smooth, and it'll make, you know, a mirror finish. And what I do is I hold it on a slight angle, and I just sort of draw file the edge until it's just perfect. And usually you can feel it, you can see it. I don't know, Meg, if you can get in there. You see that? Can you see the glue rolling off? Can you see that part?
I think so.
So you can see just as the glue starts rolling off. I'm trying to make sure you can see it on camera. See how it just rolled off? That's when you want to quit. So there shouldn't be any white goop there or from leftover glue, but you can sort of feel it in the file where just as that glue rolls off and leaves you with a finished edge. Doesn't take long to do. It actually takes less time than the planing, but this glue has to roll off. I'm using my saw bench for most of it. I'm using my belly for this part, but I'm using the saw bench for most of it because it's kind of low. It's about 17 inches, I think, or something like that off the floor. And I'm sitting on a box that's a little bit lower, so if I have a smaller piece like this, I can sit on this box and I don't have to lean over too much. Or if I have a larger piece like the other pieces, I can stand here. But if I were to do this on top of my workbench, it's a little bit too tall, and then I have to reach up over my head, and I can't see if I'm getting the kind of contact. If I'm looking down on it, I can see whether or not I'm getting the contact that I want. So now that I've got both of the edges done, my glasses failed me on that one. I set it down, and oh, see what I mean? Before I go any farther, clean the file off. I'm going to set it down, and I'm going to do the edge. So I just set the file flat on, and I just file it until it comes perfectly flush with the edge. And then I'll do the other edge, sorry. This one's got a little bit more to come off. And again, you can feel it when that glue rolls off. And that's it. That piece is edge banded. So there you have it. That's how I edge band. It doesn't take a lot of equipment or materials. It doesn't cost me very much. And even though it takes a little bit more time, it works pretty well because I don't really edge band that often, but it seems like the past week I've been doing it quite a bit. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe and have a pleasant day. Edgebanding.